Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, we're going to talk about Japanese free agent pitcher Kodai Senga and the possibility of him coming to the Dodgers. Going to talk about some predictions that Jim Bowden, former disgraced MLB general manager, made, including some that would have an impact on the Dodgers. And we are going to talk about the very disappointing follow-up to our latest conversation about Yasiel Puig, the big legal news in Puig's life, which is not good news. So that's what's on tap. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, Dodger fans. This is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now, and then you will never miss a day because you know we're not going to. If this is your first time watching or listening, my name is Jeff Snider. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio, but it's just me today. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. And we never miss a day, but individually we do miss days sometimes. And as you guys may have noticed the last couple of days, Vince held down the fort the last two episodes for me, which I really appreciate. I was at my son's last baseball tournament of the year. We are now done with youth baseball until, still have practices 3 times a week. Man, it's intense these days, a lot more than when I was a kid, but no more games or tournaments until probably February. So that was fun, and I appreciate Vince holding it down so that I could just focus on being a dad and a coach this weekend. Hope you guys enjoyed his episodes. I did. A lot of good stuff over the weekend. Obviously, it was a little hard for me to not be doing the podcast when we found out that Clayton Kershaw is coming back for a 16th season with the Dodgers. I'm not going to belabor that point because Vince did already talk about that, but let's just say I'm very happy. It is wonderful news for me as a huge Clayton Kershaw fan and as a Dodger fan. Very happy to have Kershaw coming back. But speaking of guys who might be in the Dodgers rotation in 2023, there's a Japanese pitcher named Kodai Senga, and I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. I hope that I am. It's my best guess. It's not a super hard word or hard name. I just am not intimately familiar with the ins and outs of how Japanese names are pronounced. So I hope I'm not butchering it too badly. But he is coming over. He's 29 years old, coming over as a free agent. There's no posting fee attached to him. And so he will be a legit free agent, can sign for as much as he wants with whoever he wants. That team doesn't have to pay any posting fee to his Japanese team. And he is, first things first, he's a one-way player. He's just a pitcher. He doesn't hit like Ohtani does. So we're not going to get the next Ohtani, but he does have potential to be pretty darn good on the mound. And I've seen mixed reports. I haven't seen this guy pitch, honestly. All I can do is I've read a lot about him recently, but, I'm even if I had seen him pitch, I'm not a scout. I know what I like. I know what I see, but I don't know that I would have any extra insight. I've read a lot from people who actually do know more than I do and are pretty smart about this kind of thing. But one thing we know is that his agent said he wants to sign with the big market team that is in win now mode. And that screams Dodgers. And the Dodgers have at least one opening in their starting rotation. Right now, they have Julio Urias and Clayton Kershaw and Tony Gonsolin and Dustin May. And, there's varying degrees of question marks about a few of those guys as far as will they be around for the whole season, as far, health-wise or whatever. And then they have a qualifying offer out to Tyler Anderson. I believe the deadline for him to accept or reject that is today, Tuesday. And so we may know more by about the time you're listening to this, whether Anderson is coming back. If he does, even then, there's always room for more good starting pitchers. Whether they, I could see them thinking that maybe Dustin May should be a reliever with his great stuff and health track record. Maybe they're not totally convinced on Tony Gonsolin's health. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw, they're not expecting to get 32 starts from him next year. So you can never have too many starting pitchers. So I think the Dodgers could still be interested in Senga, even if Tyler Anderson accepts a qualifying offer or if they come to an agreement with him. And so big market win now team definitely points in favor of the Dodgers. The agent also said that Senga is very interested in analytics and wants to learn more about them. Another point in favor of the Dodgers. And it's, as a pitcher, this guy, he hits 100 miles an hour. And that's all happened in the last few years. He was a guy who used to throw 92, 93. It's kind of the Jacob deGrom model. When Jacob deGrom came up, he threw a little harder than 92 or 93. Jacob deGrom didn't throw nearly as hard as he throws now. When he first came up, he was a very good pitcher, but he was a different kind of pitcher than he is right now, and not as good as he is right now. Also, though, used to be a little bit more healthy. Senga can hit 100 miles an hour, but his fastball is probably actually his fourth best pitch. He has a splitter that is, from what I've read, one of the best in the world. That it will be, when he comes to the big leagues, it will be one of the best splitters in baseball in the major leagues. And that's his best pitch. And then he has a slider and a cutter that are both above average pitches. And then his fastball is, average or above, even with the speed. But the three off-speed offerings make the fastball play up. And so definitely a guy, especially since the Dodgers don't need an ace. They've got Julio, they've got Kershaw, and they may be on the market for an ace somewhere, but Senga isn't going to get paid like an ace. Likely he's going to get, maybe $15 million a year. The projection at MLB trade rumors is 5 years, $75 million, which would be $15 million a year. And that would be pretty awesome. That is, that's pocket change to the Dodgers. So I would love to see Senga come to the Dodgers. From what I've read, the Dodgers obviously have a tradition. They had Hideo Nomo, the first player to come over from Japan in about 30 years, and he started the wave. And they've had, they had Kenta Maeda. They've had a couple others in between. And so a lot of tradition, history there. LA is right across the Pacific Ocean from Japan. Not very close. The Pacific Ocean is actually pretty big. But it does seem like sometimes Japanese players like the West Coast for that reason. And so there are a lot of things that make you think, wow, he might make sense going to the Dodgers. And it would make me pretty happy. I think he would fill a role. He's a right-handed pitcher, which, I don't think that's super important, but, if they do have Julio and Kershaw and Anderson in their rotation, might be nice to have Senga along with Gonsolin and or May. And then they also, their top prospects, all of those guys, all their pitching prospects, the three who pitched in the big leagues in 2022, Ryan Pepio, Andre Jackson, and Michael Grove, they're all right-handed. The two top guys in AAA, Bobby Miller and Gavin Stone, are right-handed. And so they've got a lot of right-handed guys available coming in, but Senga would be that guy ready at the big league level to come in and be for sure ready to pitch. I have no idea what the Dodgers are going to do with the rotation because, like I said, they've got all those guys. They have so many potential starting pitchers, and it seems like they're going to have to deal some of them or something. And they may even be in the market on some of the other big name free agents like Jacob deGrom or Justin Verlander or Carlos Rodon. They may be in the market on the trade market if Corbin Burns becomes available. So many things they could do. But right now, Kodai Senga is kind of on my radar because all he costs is money and not a ton of that. Dodgers don't have to give up draft picks and any of that. So those are my thoughts on Kodai Senga. If any of you have seen him pitch, I know he pitched in the World Baseball Classic last time, I think. I haven't seen any video of that. I haven't sought it out. But if any of you have any thoughts on Kodai Senga, I'd love to hear them. If you're watching on YouTube, comment in the comment section down below. If you're listening on the podcast, hit us up on social media or email or whatever. I'll give you all the contact info at the end like I do. I'm going to come back in just a minute. I am going to talk about Jim Bowden, former Major League General Manager. He wrote some predictions for The Athletic, and I'm going to talk about some of those. So thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're also always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, I am back, and I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every day. I'm going to talk here in a second about some 25 predictions that Jim Bowden made over on The Athletic. I'm not going to talk about all 25, just the 5 or 6 that apply to the Dodgers or could affect what the Dodgers do. And then in the last segment, speaking of betting, I'm going to talk about Yasiel Puig's latest legal trouble and how this could spell the end of his major league career. Unfortunately, if his career wasn't already ended over here, this might do it. So let's talk about Jim Bowden, though. Jim Bowden at The Athletic, he wrote an article called 25 Predictions for Another Wild Winter of Signings and Trades. And he does make sure to mention, he said, I've decided to embrace the chaos this year. So here are 25 predictions, some serious, some silly, and others somewhere in between for what's shaping up to be another fun offseason. And it's kind of interesting. He mentions that not all of the predictions are totally serious. He doesn't actually say which ones are and aren't, and that leaves him plausible deniability. I've probably mentioned on this podcast before, if you read any of my writing about Jim Bowden, you know, I don't have a ton of respect for this guy. He's been a major league general manager twice. He was fired by the Reds for being bad at being a general manager. And then he lost his job with the Nationals for being involved in skimming bonus money that was supposed to go to Latin American teenagers, skimming that. So, yeah, between being bad at being a GM and being a shady dude, and we're not even going to get into him stealing, like lying, faking sources and stealing information from other people on Twitter and pretending he had sources. Yeah, just a shady dude. So take everything he says with at least one grain of salt and probably 5 or 6, which is what I do. So I'm going to assume that all of these are silly predictions because the ones I'm going to talk about, I don't know how likely any of them are to come true. And so I'm just going to go down the list. The first one, actually, this one could be his very first prediction. He says, of the 14 players to receive the qualifying offer, Jock Peterson, Martin Perez, and Tyler Anderson are the only ones to accept it. This isn't crazy to me. I haven't looked at the whole list of 19 guys. Is that what he said? 14 guys. I don't know who else got the qualifying offer. I saw the list. I didn't, I guess if I got hypnotized and was forced to review it, I could probably list all 14. I think that's how hypnosis works. But all I did was look for the names Tyler Anderson and Trea Turner, which I found, and the name Clayton Kershaw, which I didn't find. That was all I cared about that list. So I don't know about the 11 other guys, but those 3 guys he mentions. Jock Peterson, I think it would be a shock if he doesn't accept the qualifying offer. Jock has never made more than about $8 million in a season in his career. And to be offered $19.65 million, it seems like a no-brainer. I don't think he has more than that on the open market. I don't think there's going to be teams clamoring to give him a multi-year deal. So I think Jock is definitely going to take this offer. Martin Perez, I have very few opinions about that guy. I am familiar with him. If you lined up, gave me pictures of 30 major league pitchers and said, which one's Martin Perez? No way in the world I'd get it. I'd probably recognize 15 of the others and rule them out. But yeah, I don't know what Martin Perez looks like. I don't know how good he is at pitching. I've looked at his stats. He was pretty good in 2022 and has been not great most of the rest of his career. He's had little spurts where he's been good. Seems to me like he's another prime candidate to accept the qualifying offer simply because it's hard to see a huge multi-year deal. But the other thing is it doesn't have to be huge. If he gets a 3-year offer worth $30 million even, that's about half the average annual value, but it's $10 million more than the qualifying offer guarantees. And so maybe he takes that but the thing is you have to decide on the qualifying offer before you know what offers are out there necessarily. And so you kind of have to feel out the market. And so I would guess that Perez will accept the qualifying offer, but I don't have strong feelings one way or the other. Tyler Anderson, I go back and forth on whether I think he's going to accept it or not. He, much like, actually Jock and Perez, the thing they have in common with Anderson, besides being left-handed, is that none of them have ever made anywhere close to $19.65 million in a year. None of them have ever even made $10 million or even $9 million in a year. They have all been low-paid players. And so this is a huge raise for any of them, which is why I would guess that's why Bowden picked them as the guys he thinks will accept the QO, because yeah, if you're Tyler Anderson, who's made $17 million in his entire career, getting $19 million in one fell swoop, that sounds like a pretty good deal. On the other hand, Tyler Anderson is definitely going to get multi-year deals, and Tyler Anderson could get multi-year deals worth 40-something million dollars. And so is he really going to accept just under 20 million when he could get 40 million guaranteed? Well, the one reason that he might, well, a couple of reasons. One, he likes being a Dodger for sure. And if he's betting on himself, he could go, accept the qualifying offer, have another great season for the Dodgers, hit free agency again next year without having the qualifying offer attached, because that's the thing. There's penalties for signing a guy who declined a qualifying offer. And those penalties can be steep, especially the penalties are steeper for teams that spend a lot of money than they are for cheapo teams, which is backwards if you ask me, but I'm a fan of a big market team. So maybe I'm biased just a little bit. But yeah, Tyler Anderson, if he accepts the qualifying offer, comes back to the Dodgers, has another great season, hits free agency again next year, could get that multi-year deal again next year and have an extra 20 million bucks in his pocket on top of that. And it's a kind of low risk bet because, yeah, I mean, you're talking about millions of dollars on the table, but your worst case scenario is you're getting 20 million bucks next year. And that is a worst case scenario. I suspect all of us listening or talking right now would be happy to take that worst case scenario. So it wouldn't surprise me if Anderson does accept it. There's, like I said, a few reasons he might. I still think the most likely result is probably Anderson, whether he accepts or declines the qualifying offer. I think the most likely result is him signing a multi-year deal with the Dodgers, and that kind of solves everything for him. So that's another prediction, or that's the first prediction from Jim Bowden. I won't spend as much time on the other ones necessarily. Trea Turner, I think that was number 4. Yeah, he says the Angels will shock the baseball world and sign shortstop Trea Turner to an 8-year, $264 million deal. Turner becomes their leadoff hitter with Shohei Ohtani, Mike Trout, and Anthony Rendon batting behind him. And yes, they still need pitching to be contenders. So, yeah, I just don't see Trea Turner to the Angels at all. That's a $33 million a year deal he's talking about. And then he mentions Ohtani, Trout, and Rendon, who all have also $30+ million deals that they are getting paid. I just have a hard time seeing the Dodgers or the Angels committing $140 million bucks a year to 4 players. And especially Anthony Rendon hasn't played much the last 2 years. And when he has, he's been slightly below average. Trout obviously has his injury issues. When he's playing, he's still one of the best players in baseball. All those things. It's like, I don't understand at all. Like, I'm ready. I will bet my shoe, or I will eat my shoe. I'm willing to bet if the Angels sign Trea Turner to a contract anywhere close to what Jim Bowden predicted, I will eat my shoe. I know you guys like when I make the eat my shoe guarantees. I might actually do it this time, but I don't think it's going to come up because I don't think the Angels are going to sign him. The other big 4 shortstops that Bowden weighs in on all of them too. Let's see. Xander Bogaerts, he has going to the Phillies for 7 years, $196 million, which is $28 million a year. And he says they moved Bryson Stott to second base. He has Carlos Correa going to the Cubs on a 10-year, $327 million deal, which is slightly less per year than what he's predicting for Trea Turner, but 2 extra years, which maybe makes up for the 2-year age difference, which, as I mentioned last week, is really only 15 months, but by baseball ages, it's 2 years. And then Dansby Swanson. He has Dansby Swanson going to the Mariners for 6 years, $154 million, which is, let's see, just under $26 million, I think, per year. But he has the Mariners moving him to second base to leave J.P. Crawford at shortstop. So that's an interesting one. So he doesn't have the Dodgers getting any of the big four shortstops, and he doesn't address, obviously 25 predictions isn't enough to predict the entire offseason, but he doesn't predict what the Dodgers will do about their shortstop situation. So, like I said, take it all with many grains of salt. Jim Bowden is not a GM anymore for a reason, for several reasons, one of which was he was bad at being a GM, which means he's probably bad at predicting what good GMs will do in the offseason. You can quote me on that, I guess. Don't even need to quote me because I am recording this for posterity, and it's available on YouTube and wherever podcasts are found. So I'm going to come back in just a minute. I'm going to talk about Yasiel Puig. I talked a lot about Puig on an episode last week, and this one will not be as positive. Unfortunately, bad legal news for Yasiel Puig. So that's on tap. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. Okay, I am back for one last segment. I want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Please, if you haven't yet, please subscribe wherever you're watching and listening right now. Love to get our subscribers up. We really do appreciate seeing how many of you are listening and watching the show. It means a lot to us. We love seeing your comments. If you're on YouTube, comment down below. Tell us what you think, what you like, what you hate. If you're listening on the podcast, I'll give you all the contact info at the end of the episode. We'd love to hear from you too about your thoughts. So Yasiel Puig, word came down on Monday that Yasiel Puig is going to court on Tuesday to officially plead guilty to lying to the feds about a sports gambling ring. That's the headline on the LA Times. And basically, Yasiel Puig in 2019-ish, he was involved in placing bets through an illegal gambling operation, betting on sports. The sports that were listed do not include baseball. The complaint didn't specifically say he didn't bet on baseball, but the bets were on tennis, football, and basketball that are mentioned in the report. And so I don't think he would necessarily be I don't know exactly all the ins and outs, but I'm pretty sure baseball's policy really is focused mostly on betting on baseball because it's all about the integrity of the game. I mean, Major League Baseball is in bed with gambling companies these days. So I don't think they can get too upset about this. Is obviously illegal gambling, and the difference between illegal gambling and legal gambling for the most part is the tax money that the government gets, which is why the government likes to crack down on these things, because you're going around them and not getting them their tax money when you make your gambling bets this way. Gambling bets. Yes, I am hip on the lingo. One thing that was interesting, Bill Shaken tweeted this. He said, he says he's quoting the plea agreement. It's in quotation marks and everything. The conviction in this case makes it practically inevitable and a virtual certainty that defendant will be removed or deported from the United States. Defendant may also be denied United States citizenship and admission to the United States in the future. If that was the case, I mean, that would basically mean Yasiel Puig's MLB career is over because he can't come in the United States anymore. The problem with that is Yasiel Puig is a U.S. citizen. He became a U.S. citizen in 2019. And that, naturalized citizenship can be revoked in some circumstances, but those are generally related to the actual citizenship being received fraudulently or under false pretenses. And none of that really applies to Puig. He's probably already doing the illegal gambling at the time he was naturalized, but what he's actually pleading guilty to and being convicted of is lying to investigators earlier this year. So it didn't happen until 3 years after he became a citizen. So what happened was Puig was involved in this gambling ring. He ran up close to $300,000 in gambling debts. So not only was he betting on sports, he wasn't very good at it. And anyway, so he was involved in all that. And earlier this year, federal investigators met with Yasiel Puig, asked him questions with his attorney present. They made it clear to him that lying to them was a federal crime, and he proceeded to lie to them, said that he didn't know the guy or that he never talked about gambling with them. And they had records of text messages and phone calls where he did talk a lot about gambling with him. He lied about the extent of his debts and collections and all of that stuff. Basically, they asked Puig questions that they knew the answers to, and he gave the wrong answers. And he even was caught on tape leaving a message on WhatsApp for one of, somebody else involved in it, admitting that he had lied to the investigators. So, it makes sense that he's pleading guilty. And really, in the context of what I talked about with Puig last week, it makes sense even with that, because in its purest form, pleading guilty is taking responsibility for your actions. Obviously there's plea deals and everything, according to at least one report that, where was it? His attorney said, under the sentencing guidelines, he will be eligible for probation, and he looks forward to putting this behind him. That's from Yasiel Puig's attorney. So, sounds like the plea deal arrangement is no jail time. This could actually, the conviction could carry up to 5 years in prison, but it sounds like there's not going to be any jail time for Puig. He's going to pay a $55,000 fine. And so, as far as I can tell, there's nothing about this that would make him ineligible to return to Major League Baseball. But I wonder if it is the death knell in his coffin to prevent him from ever getting back to the big leagues. I think it may have been an uphill battle anyway for him, but now with this, being on probation, I guess I could see a team taking a chance on him if they thought he was worth it. But, the play on the field, I don't know that it necessarily justified taking a risk like this. And we'll have to see. And maybe there's some legalities. Maybe he's going to be ineligible to play in Major League Baseball anyway, because of some little rule. I don't know. But it seems like a team would have to be pretty desperate at this point to go after Puig, knowing this latest, he'll have a conviction on his record, a convicted felon, basically. Not ideal, not what you're looking for. And, I saw some comments saying it's a victimless crime, all of that. And, in some ways that's true. Online betting, it's legal in a lot of places. People still do it illegally, partly because of the tax reasons I said, and partly because it's not legal everywhere. And California is one of those places where it's not legal. And, I don't know, like the same groups that are involved in illegal gambling are often also involved in illegal worse things. And, so I don't necessarily, I think laws should be obeyed. Basically, I think if you don't like a law, fight to change it. But until it's changed, except in extreme circumstances, you should obey the law. And so I have a hard time getting too fired up about a guy breaking the law and getting punished for breaking the law. But I do think that this is better than, better than some of the things Puig has been accused of for starters, but definitely better than a lot of things that people could have done. And so I'm interested to see what happens. I do think this probably means Puig's not coming back to the big leagues. And we'll see if I'm wrong at some point, but it seems like this is probably it for him. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, on anything else I talked about today. I appreciate you guys making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with the local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. If you're not watching or listening to Locked On Dodgers every weekday morning, we'd love if you add 1 or 2 days a month to your rotation. If you have friends or family who love the Dodgers as much as you do, please tell them about the show. Maybe they'll like it as much as you like it. You can follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at Vince Samperio. I'm on Twitter at Snider, and the DMs are open in all those places. You can reach out to us whenever you want. You can also reach out to us via email at lockedondodgers@gmail.com. And our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK-5625. We are here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.